Welcome everyone, this is GBO, and today we are here with Treedom, with Alida Nardi. We're going to talk about the green solution for a greener planet that Treedom is offering us. And you know what we are a networking club, international club. I say hello to all people in YouTube all around the world that is watching us. And we love networking, business networking, and that is how we think that business should be done, starting by knowing each other and building trust in each other, and from there we can start doing things together, especially business together. So without any further ado, Alida, please, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, GBO, for letting this meet happen. My name is Alida. I work for Treedom, which is the first platform that allows you to plant a tree anywhere in the world with just a click. And I look after the Iberian and Latin American markets for Treedom, so that's why we're here today in Spain. Myself, I'm very international, I'm Brazilian. I live in Italy, I look after Iberian markets, and I've lived in the US, in Denmark, so I do strongly believe that networking and multinational solutions are necessary, especially when we're talking about environment. That's something that goes beyond the national, so we need action. So I'd like to know a little bit more about Treedom. So what is Treedom about? We are a group of more or less 100 people that's been doubled during the pandemic years that aims to make the world a greener and better place. Of course, we plant trees because we love trees. They are good for CO2 absorption, isn't that right? So let's see, just to break the ice a little bit, if how much you know about trees and what they do. So here's something that I think is very well appreciated across Italy, Spain, Brazil. Do you know which plant is this?
Coffee.
It's a coffee, right? And does anyone know how much a coffee tree can absorb in terms of kilos of CO2 during its first 10 years of life? I guess a number. None. Okay, I'll give you that. That would be 55 kilos of CO2. That's the same amount needed to produce 1 kilo of meat. I'll ask another question. Does anyone know which tree can absorb the most CO2? An avocado or a grevillea? Supposing that you all know what a grevillea is. Any guess? Knowing that how much coffee is? Okay. So an avocado absorbs 500 kilos of CO2 during its first 10 years of life, whereas a grevillea absorbs 800 kilos of CO2.
Per year?
During its first 10 years of life. Of course, the first year they don't absorb because they're very small, but they will once they grow. That's because CO2 is mostly stocked in the trunk, in the wood part. So the bigger, the more CO2 they can absorb. And that's the reason why the grevillea, being a green plant, absorbs more than an avocado or any other fruit plant. As fruits, hello. As usually fruit trees, they are smaller, whereas green trees, they tend to grow more. A grevillea, by the way, is a tree that's very much used in Kenya. It's good because it protects the crops from the winds, and it gives the soil more moisture, it gives us healthy soil. And the last one, this is my favorite tree, and that is the baobab. Now that you are all very warmed up on CO2 absorption, you can imagine that this might absorb a lot, and that is right. It does absorb a lot. It's 3,000 kilos of CO2 during its first 10 years. But trees are not just about CO2. Yes, they do absorb CO2. Yes, it's important to fight climate change, but they have other benefits that are fundamental to revert climate change and to comply, let's say, with the SDGs, with the Sustainable Development Goals set by the UN. This is because it has other environmental benefits, such as it protects biodiversity. So not only we have to minimize our impact, but we have to do more to recover what we've done in the past. It also combats soil erosion and desertification. Talking about social benefits, the way we plant it, we are funding local farms. And that's because we are planting in agroforestry systems. That means, what is agroforestry? I just heard about reforestation, right? Well, agroforestry systems are a very old and traditional solution, but to the modern problems, because we can combine reforestation with agriculture to give a living for the farmers that need the most. So instead of doing monoculture, we are going to plant trees in agricultural environments, adding diversity to it, not only to ensure health of the environment, of the soil, to ensure it's going to be very productive, but also to give social benefits such as economic diversification, because if in 1 year one crop goes badly for that farmer, he has another option. He has his fruits, he has other kinds of things to sell in the local markets. But also, it gives income opportunities, so we can employ more people, especially women that otherwise wouldn't be employed in these areas. So they get empowered, they can sell their fruits, they can take care of the trees, and get a nice living. So it's not just about planting trees, because planting trees, it's not always a good idea. Planting the wrong tree in the wrong place can actually cause more damage than produce benefits. So it's everything about the right tree, the right place, and the right purpose. Treedom has chosen to plant the right trees, so we choose these species along with the local communities that we collaborate with. It's not that we make a decision here from Europe, where we're going to plant, when we're going to plant in the southern hemisphere, mostly Latin America, Africa, and Asia. So we have to do a plan together with them, knowing what they need, what are the problems, what are their concerns, and what they can make most use of. And then the right purpose. So that's why as well we don't plant as much in Europe, because we must say Europe is covered. We have our governments that look after us, whereas in other countries, Treedom is most needed, and we can make a higher impact. Those are 10 out of the 17 global goals set by the UN, so we comply with 10 of them. And those are our funders. I know that most of you are entrepreneurs, or you work at organizations at a managerial level, so like that you all like a history or a story or an anecdote about how a business started. Could that be right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Federico, and he's actually our current CEO. It all started in Africa when they went for another project, another work in Cameroon. And this is what they found: deforestation. But not only deforestation. What they saw there were local people that would sell acres and acres of forest, foreigners, for $1,000, for nothing really. Because for them, locally, the forest is something that will never end. They live in there, so they cannot see how we don't have any more forests. For them, it's just really endless. So he thought, well, I would really like to reverse that trend. Instead of people paying to deforest, what about if we paid to reforest? And then this stayed in their minds so far. That was before 2010. And then another thing happened. They really liked to play Farmville. Who does remember that? Farmville was a very popular game on Facebook. I bet you played it, or if you don't, of course you know a sister, a brother, or a friend that did, right? It had a lot of users actually, and they played Farmville, and in order to make the most beautiful farm, Federico used to pay for new trees to make his garden a little bit more beautiful, and to impress his friends or whoever he was playing with. And everybody used to say to him, okay, but this is not very smart. you are paying for something that is only virtual, for a game. Why are you paying to plant trees virtually? And then that's when the two things came along and combined, and then Treedom was born. So what if we create a platform that people can pay with their credit cards to plant a tree, but then instead of being just a virtual tree or just a game, it was an actual tree that would bring benefits to the planet. So that's how we were born in 2010 as a project. In 2014, Treedom became a B Corp. It was actually the first Italian company to be certified as a B Corp and one of the first European companies to be certified. Of course, our mission is to plant trees, so it's not much harder to comply with environmental and social benefits. We don't have to have a separate CSR department, but we are in it because that's what we do. And then we started collaborating with companies because both private people and companies, they want to do their bit for the planet. We just did a survey during before the Earth Day on Friday. That was the 22nd of April. And we found out that 86% of Spanish people do want to do something for the planet. They realize, they are aware that something needs to be done and they want to participate. Only 10% of them, though, think that planting trees is the solution. Well, we saw that planting trees is much more than CO2 and it's something that we need to revert climate change. An American study actually says that we would need to plant 1 trillion trees to reverse climate change by 2030. So that's possible. All we need is just a click, isn't it? Companies most look for us because they want to do their part as well. It could be for CSR, to comply with sustainability mission of the company, so all plant trees. But more than that, what Treedom has done here is to tag each tree and to make in a way that each tree would have its own virtual identity. So every tree we plant in our projects across 17 countries are geotagged, photographed, and we keep in contact with the community to monitor and to do interviews to see how the project is going. So this allows us to put everything online for the companies for total transparency, to see where they have their forest, where is it's being planted, where the tree is, has it been transplanted to the ground yet or not, or still in the nursery or not. And then each tree can be gifted to people. So you can gift to your client if you have your ecological product and you want to maximize your communication in it. For instance, Intimissimi, when it first launched its sustainable collection, its ecological collection, every client that would walk in the store or purchase a piece of the collection online would receive a tree, an invitation to take part of the Intimissimi forest. So it could be used for that. It could be used to engage your employees. A lot of people, a lot of companies do a lot for sustainability, but it's not always easy to engage your audience or engage your employees. Most of the times, it remains on the C-level. So the C-level knows what the company is doing, but most of people don't. And employees are the first ambassadors of the company, so you must communicate with them. They must know what you are doing. And the tree, in this case, can become a symbol of the company's sustainability, to celebrate everything is being done inside, but it's a way of showing also outside and engaging with our original gift. So I Treedom, and I anticipate myself, so that's because of the accountability, because we have total transparency of the projects, of the trees. You can see everything online on real time. We have our first forests that were planted. One of the first big ones was NL back in 2012. It's still online, it's growing, and people still are receiving updates about the project, seeing the face of the people that are taking care of their plants, and engagement, because you can plant a tree and then you can give the trees to your audience. So even an event, instead of giving the classic pen or a bag, an ecological bag, you can surprise everyone giving them a tree, which is good for you because you're doing your bit for the planet, but then you allow your audience to be part of the initiative. And then most important, why Treedom? Because we do not only plant trees, we grow trees. Very easy to just throw away a few seeds on land, but it's not the same to grow the trees. It means it has to go to the nursery, it has to be taken care of, it has to go through a process of grafting, it has to be transplanted in the ground, it has to be watered twice a day so it can grow. And that's very important when I'm talking about planting trees. It's complex, it's not as easy as it can seem. And we need to ensure, of course, the companies that plant with us, that the trees will grow, because we're declaring that the trees are absorbing the CO2 they are. So we need to ensure that is going to happen. Here's a video for you to, I talked about a lot about the project, so let's see it. Very short video to show you the projects where we are. This is the impact that we've got so far. That video was made 5 months ago, so less than 5 months we already planted another 1 million trees. Yes, we took 10 years to plant the first 1 million trees, and only a few years to plant the other 2 million. So that's a good thing. I read it as people are getting more aware of the problem and they want to do their bit, companies want to do their bit. So I think it's a positive sign, and in our place at least, the pandemic made it very clear. So this is how much those trees are absorbing. More than 108,000 beneficiaries. Those are the farmers that are involved in it, and have lots of interviews with those farmers. Really, a tree can change a life in those projects. Yeah?
Is there an amount of CO2 the 800 is since the beginning, or is annually, or?
We calculated in the first 10 years
That
of
is
life
okay.
of the
The
GBO.
equivalent
It's
to-
going to absorb much more during its lifetime, but it's hard to calculate because you cannot know how much a tree is going to live. It lives a lot of years if we allow it. And so we calculate the first 10 years. That's how it's done usually.
So those are local farmers that work for themselves. They don't work for any company or anything. They have
No.
their own crops.
No, Treedom partners with local NGOs
NGOs,
and
okay.
local cooperatives that coordinate these
Okay.
farmers. So they come to work in their nursery, and then when they are ready to be transplanted, each farmer receives its bit of plants to transplant in the ground.
Yeah, because it'd be really hard to coordinate with 180.
Exactly. What we do have is a forestry team that travels around the project, so they visit each project at least once or twice a year to monitor that everything's being done according to the treatment standard, and to give training to those farmers how to geotag, how to nursery, how to take care of the plants. And then of course you have the photographers of Treedom that have the most amazing job in the world, because they travel all around talking to people, doing interviews and doing these beautiful photos of the forests that we are helping growing. And that's it. Let's green the planet. And I would put here also an interrogation mark. If you are willing to help us green the planet together. Yes, that's what I need to do here. Thank you.
question on the model, how the money flows. Let's say you
Yeah.
purchase or you buy a tree, and then until the end, how is that flow?
Well, we have a platform for B2C and for B2B.
For the B2B?
For the B2B, the B2C is easy. You just go there, you choose your tree, you pay, and then you have a tree.
One time payment.
One-time payment.
It's not land or something.
No. You can do a subscription if you want to, but to add trees to your profile. On the B2B side, you can create your company's profile and purchase as many trees as you want, depending on the impact that you have. So I want to reduce my carbon footprint, I want to engage my employees, I want to combine it with my project. I have an event coming up, so I want to gift my audience trees. So depending on the quantity, you can go directly to the website and purchase it. For larger forests, so we are talking here for more than 300 forests, then you can talk to a Treedom representative such as myself, and then it's another procedure. So you pay as a contract. We are a company, we're not an NGO, although we are a social company because we're certified in ECO, because we are funding these farmers. Actually, we funded even before companies joined the program because we are already committed to fund these farmers.
And the
We have-
farmers
they
get
get
regular payment,
yes.
or is that one time?
They get one time per tree, but what we are doing is the trees are theirs. We are not going, it's not property of Treedom, it's the farmer's property. What we are doing is that funding the tree until it grows enough for the farmers to have a benefit, an economic benefit. So until their avocado tree doesn't grow and then they can eat the avocado and sell it in the market, then we are funding them.
But the avocado in itself belongs to the
To
farmer.
the farmer, belongs to the farmer, stays there. Some people ask me, well, can I receive a box of avocado that I pay? Well, that wouldn't be very sustainable to bring a box of avocado. But anyways, yeah.
Where are you located? I have Africa and South America, I guess, or
The
Asia.
projects that we fund are mainly in Latin America. So we have Haiti, Guatemala, Colombia, Ecuador. We have Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, Cameroon, Ghana in Africa. And then we have Thailand and Nepal in Asia. And I'm sure I forgot some countries, but then we can look in the website, yeah. Exactly.
Do you think that might be a possibility to also be a supporter of tree? I am already a supporter of a tree.
Great.
Yes, I
Great
have
to know.
my own tree with the name. I put it on. It's an olive tree. And
Yeah.
I get also the olive oil of that tree in the season. If I want to have more, I can pay more, not just to have more than one season, but to help with the local work that they do with my tree, and to be sure that it's well taken care of and all that stuff. So the economics around my tree grows up and up. Would you think that this would be possible in your company?
No, because we're talking about long distance.
Yeah,
An
the
olive tree,
distance.
you're probably talking about here in
Long
Egypt.
tree takes 10 years to grow, it's different.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that wouldn't be possible in these projects, nor it's the aim, because then the fruit stays locally for them. They eat the fruit, or they sell the excellent in the local market, and it's very important. People usually don't think about it, but we have
Sorry,
a
I think I didn't explain correctly. What I mean is not to get the avocado, the fruit myself. It's to be the co-owner of that, so I can get an income of that sales from the avocado. I don't want to have it myself. What I want to be is the co-proprietary of the fruit that's going to come from my tree, the tree that I pay for. And then the farmer could have less expenses because I pay with him. So we share the
okay,
business.
so it's yeah, and even more, like
Yeah.
you want to fund it even more.
Yeah, exactly.
economically.
Yes. That's why I think that would be a
That could
possibility.
something to think of.
Okay,
Right now, we just fund the planting of the tree,
okay,
and it's first years. Then the local farmers, they do what they feel like it's most important with the tree and with the fruits it gives.
One question, it's more going into the digital age. Have you thought about going into NFTs?
We've been contacted
It's
a
hard.
lot.
Like it
a
can
lot
be
from
integrated somehow. I see that your
Yeah.
purpose is different,
Yeah.
but you could be selling virtual trees and giving that money directly to the whole company to, like, yeah.
It's something new to us.
Yeah.
So we've been
And
contacted
like this people.
by a
can-
Yes,
lot of
absolutely.
NFTs.
I see it.
Exactly. That's something that we are working on. We are
Okay.
working on it. Yeah. We don't have an answer right yet.
Yeah, it's hard, no, it's hard.
It's hard, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's everything. It's true.
At least the good ones. At least the good ones.
I have company with a company, and then we're doing NFTs for rhinos in Africa. So
Okay.
each one had their own artwork. They got together with an artist that did rhinos, and each one could buy a rhino, and like this helped with like the specific NGOs
Okay.
that work for rhinos.
Now, what we had were some NFTs that actually integrated the Treedom trees into their NFTs.
Okay.
So they purchased that quantity, like 1,000, 2,000 trees into their NFTs. So everyone that would purchase something from their NFTs would get a tree.
Okay.
That's how they did. But it's always the gift mechanism.
Well, it's very neat.
Yeah, it's
It's hard.
Exactly.
I think in your case for your mission, you also need to take care of what's, I mean, there's not an answer, but what's the impact, the footprint of generating, creating, maintaining an NFT, the servers, the people who will access
It's
that.
very cool.
For what you are doing, which is
Exactly.
different from Ryan project, and it's important because people start asking these questions. It's like, okay, now get the NFT, but then you need to offset also that part of it.
Exactly, that's another issue. That's why we don't have an answer yet, but
Okay, the trees are property of the farmers.
yeah.
How do you control that they continue taking care of the trees, and how do you control that they do not cut the tree and sell the wood, for example? Because are theirs,
yeah.
not yours.
Of course, well, because we are talking about agroforestry, the trees are important for them. It's not that we just plant in a land forest. Every tree has its purpose, so they have their own garden, their own land. Those are small projects, so it's very easy to control. And they need to plant nearby their houses because they need to water the plants. If they cut the tree, then maybe their crops won't get the same as it would with the tree. So there is a lot of training on this part. So I have my crop of coffee, okay? If I add a few green trees there and a few other fruit trees there, my crop is gonna get better. It's gonna give me more. So it's important for me for them to sell. So it's not convenient to cut the trees. Plus, we have to trust the local community that we have, our local partners. That's what they do. They meet every 15 days to talk to the farmers. They go to these meetings, and that's something that we're funding as well. Even the class teachers, for them to go to the meetings and to get training and to get orientation on how to take care of the trees. And then we have, of course, a monitoring part that is the forest team that goes to the projects and count every tree in the nursery and checks to be sure that everything is getting planted and it's growing. Now, of course, something can happen, like a rain that destroys the trees, or of course there is a mortality rate that is normal. Just 2 weeks ago, one of our colleagues was in Malawi, or was it in Tanzania? Okay, they're very close by. And he was there to solve an emergency. And the emergency was that in one of the projects, the elephants ate the mangoes. And that's a problem because those mangoes were already in the ground and they were growing, they were assigned to someone. So we had to replace those mangoes, but we couldn't replace by mangoes because then the elephants would come back. So we had to replace every single mango in the area with new species that the elephants don't appreciate that much. So it can happen, but we actually know that it can happen, so we plant more than we assign to the users, so we can replace the tree.
Okay, but you cannot guarantee that the farmer are going to do his job.
The guarantee is a contract. We have contracts with the local community, so they're not supposed to cut the trees. Now, if they do, they are breaking the law, the contract, and it's something that would go into a problem with the law. They're not supposed to.
One question. And the land where the trees are planted, who belongs to? Is government?
No, the land belongs to the farmers.
Belongs to the
To
farmer.
the farmers.
And they don't fight with other people who. Because when you were explaining the history of your CEO, I could see myself in your country, in Pará, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of fights between people who they say that they own the land, others say that don't own the land, and it is.
That's something very specific to my country, to Brazil. That's another chapter. That's called as terras griladas. That's a problem, but that's something political, bureaucratic that happened in Brazil during the 60s, and that's something else that is not our problem now in the places that we are. So it's not the same dynamics.
All right.
No, it's something very, very specific to Brazil. Does anyone have? Yeah.
How many people work actually in Treedom
In
for
Treedom?
controlling everything around the world in the 70 countries?
Oh, Treedom has grown a lot in this last year. So just for you to have an idea, in 2020, before the pandemic, we were 40. I entered Treedom last year, and we were 70. Now, I don't even know the exact number, but I think we are 105 people, and we are about to hire another 20 people just in the next 3 months. And we are opening offices also in other countries of Europe. So we opened recently London, Paris, Amsterdam. 5 years ago we opened Munich in Germany, and now we are opening in the United States.
How about the pricing? Can you give us a sense about, how much it goes to
Yes, of
a tree?
course. Each tree has its price. If you go on the B2C, the private user section, for instance, a baobab, that's my favorite one, since it absorbs a lot, big and conventional. This is the highest price that we have, is 70 euros. But that's also because the baobab has a high mortality rate, so we have to plant a lot more to ensure that the tree is going to grow. Whereas a coffee tree, for instance, can cost 15 euros. So we have this range of prices. For companies, we offer a mix of species, so we don't have everything on the website, something that we can talk about, because it's more than 180 species that we plant across these countries. And then the price will depend on how many trees you want to plant and for how many years. So I want to plant a forest of 500 trees now in 2022 because I want to give my employees a Christmas gift. That's one price. Or no, I started doing my sustainability path and I want to plant 5,000 trees until 2025. So we read a little bit by year. It's another price. But in general, they could range from 10 to 13 euros more or less.
So depending on which tree you purchase, you then geolocate where you can grow those trees. Because you're not.
It's already assigned. So
Okay.
for instance, coffee, we plant in many
Yeah, like
countries.
for example, if I buy a coffee plant now, I know it's gonna be put in
Yes,
Colombia.
yes, you can
And you can choose
where.
your location.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
It's not that you assign it.
exactly. And even more for engagement, when you have a forest, a company forest, you can let your audience choose where they want to plant. So you pre-assign the trees. For instance, I'm going to have a little bit of avocados in Ecuador. I'm going to have a few coffee plants in Nepal, another regaleas in Kenya. And then when I get the gift, I can choose which one of the trees I prefer to take care of. So that's another engagement element. Yes?
Or when you say company, is there a minimum that you need to guarantee, or can it work for very small companies as well?
We work with all kinds of companies. Companies can start purchasing from 10 trees as a starter solution. And then we work with companies such as Iberdrola, Toyota, Timberland, Mitsubishi that have forests of 50,000 trees. So we work with all kinds of companies, more than 8,000 companies.
So the minimum is
10
trees. Yeah, fair enough.
10 to start with. And then you get your certificate, you get some photos of the project so you can communicate your commitment, post it on your social network. You can also put the map of your trees integrated into your website to tell about the project. There's many things you can do.
Companies that collaborate with Treedom have benefit legal or tax or something like this in Europe or
We are not an NGO. We are not a not-for-profit. We are a company, so we issue invoices. What I know we have been in the past with a few companies because it's environmental services. That's what we call the invoice. If they are participating in a project, sometimes they get funding, but it's not something that goes automatically because it's not an NGO.
I'm not an expert here, but trying to understand if I, as a company, have a cost for this service, I need to justify. How can it be justified as a company service if it's not on the NGO side?
Marketing, HR, CSR, it's not a donation.
Okay.
Companies could include the CEO that the tree absorbed in their footprint. For example,
Well, yeah. Now, talking about carbon footprint, you like different sectors.
because
You should go on.
there is a business in
Yes.
selling the CEO.
Yeah, it's being criticized, it's being reviewed, and something that we are not into the carbon credit market. And that is mainly because we do agroforestry, and agroforestry systems, they are not yet inside this market. And we chose not to be. Okay, so if you are talking about carbon footprint, that means you have to estimate your carbon footprint first. And then you have to do it a certified lab. If you're gonna do it, you're probably gonna do it because you have the obligation to. Some companies do have this obligation and they do have to compensate. And then they're not in this market. Most of the companies don't have to do it, but they want to because they are environmentally conscious. And then what we suggest usually is that you don't have to start from a bad premise to go to a good one. You don't need to say offset because then you get into a dangerous line because we're talking about carbon footprint. But you can just say we are planting and absorbing CO2. You don't need to say how much you're offsetting because then I'm doing something bad, I'm polluting, and then I'm doing something good. Just skip the first part and go straight to the other one. You're doing something good. All businesses do pollute somehow to exist. So it's important that we try to minimize the impact that we have, making sustainable choices. And then everything that we can do more to contribute is always welcome. So that's what we're trying to do instead of offsetting or doing the markets. That's something that is still being discussed. Maybe agroforestry systems will get into the market, but it's still 2 years ahead, 2 or 3 years ahead. Let's see how it goes.
And what's your vision, your aim? Well, I know like sustainability and everything, but like you want to expand, you want to have, I don't know how many millions in a couple of years.
15 million in trees in 5 years. Next 5 years.
And more countries.
Yes, more countries. We are constantly opening new projects. The thing with opening projects was that we usually, before we open a project, we go there, we get to know the partner, we have to trust it, we have to ensure that they will be able to deliver what we expect. So it takes at least 1-2 years to put it into the website. Now with the pandemic it was impossible because we couldn't travel, so everything was on standby. We are starting again now, and we will open new projects definitely in more countries. and we want to plant more trees, we rely very much on people's awareness, on the private users, but companies are really the ones that can make the difference. They are the ones that do have the power to make the difference. So that's where we are working the most.
How did you choose the projects?
How we choose
The projects?
the projects?
Yeah, Treedom.
We have it on the website. We have the Treedom standard. The projects can send to us their projects, what they want to do, where they work, and then we do a selection. They have to follow the Treedom standards, but we have it documented and displayed on the website and total transparency, how we choose the projects. So it has to be agroforestry. It cannot be a company, a business-owned land. It has to be the farmers. So there is a lot of things for us to make us choose the projects. Now, in the beginning, we were scouting the projects. Now we receive a lot of requests for us to fund the projects because they know it works, and we are actually one of the tree planters that pay the most to the farmers. So they know they can rely on us, and one of the things that we've been seeing over the last years is that they are so well trained and they understand so well the project, how it works, how to plant a tree, how to grow a tree, that we are sure that if one day Treedom wouldn't exist, the project would keep going because they learn so much and they understand the value of it. And that's something that we want to project in the future, to teach people how to be self-sustainable and keep going with the project and with the trees, with their empowerment by themselves.
One question, there's lots of corruptions around those countries. Do you have any problems with the government, any interference, any legal problems?
We do monitor very much the government area, the politics area.
Okay.
The only relation that we had most with politics, with governments, was in Italy. We did plant a few trees in Italy on mafia confiscated lands to reforest it. Yeah. So then we worked a little bit with the cities and the governments. It went very well, but in these countries our relationships mainly with the partners. And then they do have their licenses and everything.
Yeah, there's
everything.
also land problems that could be.
Yeah, but it hasn't been a problem so far. No. Not in these countries that we work in.
What kind of information do you have to the companies that collaborate with Treedom?
What kind of?
Information, or do you organize, for example, travels to know the projects or something
You
like
could,
this?
definitely.
Yes.
You know, yes, definitely. Well, now we came from the pandemic, so nobody did. But H&M in 2018 or 19, I don't recall the year exactly, they did an event for Christmas with all the employees, and each employee had to decorate a Christmas tree, a paper one, FSC, of course. So it was like a team building activity, and then in the end, every employee received a tree as a gift. And after they decorated the tree, they put it on the internet, and then they had to vote the previous tree. And the team that won went to the project to visit it in Kenya. And the farmers remember it until now because one of our colleagues just went to Kenya to visit the project. And all the farmers were pointing the trees. Here, the two white ladies came here to plant the trees. And those were H&M that went there, they planted the trees, did photos, did articles. So they were like ambassadors for the company to talk about the project and share with the other employees, the community in the company. So definitely we can organize a trip, of course.
And do you have projects in Spain for the future, or?
Well, if there is a project in Spain that could be interesting, we would evaluate it. But it's very different planting in Europe and planting in other countries. There is a question of cost. A tree planted in Europe costs a lot more, 3-4 times more. And impact. We don't have the same impact. It's a good impact, but not as high as in those countries. Anything else?
Competitors? Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of, not companies, but mostly NGOs that do tree planting. That's something good for the planet, so it's good that they do it. I think most people can do it, but the better. We offer a different service because we have this other digital side. Usually when I explain Treedom for someone who wants to plant with us, I always say, I'll explain to you what we do in real life, and then I'll explain to you what we do on the virtual side. And the engagement that we have, the contents, the fact that each tree has its own diary that you can read, you can follow the story of the people, of the community, that you can learn about the species. That's something that only we have.
Do you have an app yet? No.
Right now, no, because the website you can see it very well on the smartphone, but we are studying it. Yeah, we're studying it because we have an element of gamification as well. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
So maybe in the future we are gonna do it. So to start, we would like to invite you to plant your own very first tree with Treedom, and that's a compliment of GBO, who trusted us and committed as well, doing their bit for the planet, planted their forest to give to you your first tree.
Give them to you.
You can open the pop-up. There is a QR code, so you can just scan it or enter the Treedom website and put the code that you have. And let's find out which species you got.
Wow. So cool.
So thank you very much, Alida.
Thank you,
It's
Miguel.
been great because the presentation was like 15 minutes and the questions like half an hour, so that's
Wonderful, that's
wonderful.
wonderful, that's the best. Yeah. But I think we need a lot more meetings about sustainability to tackle each one of those issues.
Definitely, it was very interesting. So thank you very much, and now
Thank you.
we're going to enjoy our networking lunch, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.